So I work with women 50, 60, and 70, which means we entered the workforce in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And in many cases, we had to put on the Teflon suit and become mini men in order to stay alive and thrive. Is sitting in this chair and getting this check more comfortable than breaking free? And you get to a point where it's not. No more of these clients that you take just for money. I want women that I freaking love and would be best friends with anyway. Even if they weren't my clients, like I would want to hang out with them. If I'm not willing to invest in myself, how can I expect other people to invest in me?
Welcome to Unleash Your Legacy. We are going to end the burnout, ignite your passion, and allow you to live your life on your terms. That's right. I'm here today with Viveka Von Rosen. I want you to hang around because she is a modern day great at leveraging who you are. And so we're going to talk about personal transformation, how you can live a life of freedom and find balance for yourself in your life. So if you're that executive, or you're coming to a point in your career where you've done 25 years plus, and you're looking for the next thing, especially outside of your executive life, this is the interview for you. I want to jump straight in and get people into the meat of this. I want to ask you a question about right now, what we're doing right now. What is a post-executive coach? Tell us about that, and let's start there, and let's get this in.
Well, I thought it was a term I made up, but apparently other people call themselves post-executive coaches. I work with executives, but I work with executives who want to leave their executive positions and probably start something entrepreneurial. So hence post-executive, or at least taking them through the transition. For me, it's really more about what can we build after you leave where you've been, hence the post again. But I do work mainly with women who have held executive roles and are just ready to move on.
You and I spoke about this as well. We dovetail nicely because I'm the executive coach, working with people who are still, whether you call that grinding, I don't like to call it grinding. I like to building that vibrant career that's mission-led, that it's purpose-driven. And you're helping that transition is something that I used to do, but I don't do much of anymore, is actually getting people to move from being the employee to this freedom-based person who has maybe some entrepreneurial spirit to investigate, or they've got some other deeper personal missions and purpose. So maybe tell us a little bit about, why don't you give us some examples? Who are the people in the front of your mind right now that you could share with us and say, this great lady's kind of case study one, and here's another one. Give us an example.
Sure. So one of my clients, she's literally a rocket scientist and works at a large rocket company, for want of a better description. And what she's really passionate, though, about is helping other women find their space in aerospace. And what's interesting is when she first came to me almost a year ago, we thought what her next role was going to be was really helping women, like, coaching, consulting, but helping these women find their place in the aerospace industry. But what we found out is she was getting more engagement with top level people in those industries going, how can I be an ally? Mostly men saying, how can I be an ally and how can I help you with this? So it's really interesting because we thought bottom up and, let's empower these women to find their space. That's a little bit my bias because I work with women. But what we've discovered is it really needs to be top down. So she's actually starting to have these conversations and starting to create a space for leaders in aerospace aeronautics to have a conversation about bringing more women into the industry. So that's pretty cool. And she's writing a book and she's a speaker and we're getting her that visibility. So I was excited, that she was my first client, but also to see just in a year how she's already morphed her delivery. She knew what she wanted to do. She knew where her passion was, but what the form of it was has kind of shifted a little bit. Similarly, I have another woman who's just, oh my gosh, she's so smart. She's a little younger. She's my young one at 40. And she is just so brilliant in the world of research. And I never even thought about it that way. Like I thought if you're a big giant corporation, you can afford to have people come in and do, studies, and I'm even forgetting the name of it right now, but she goes in and she gets these groups of people to get really the answers that other companies and individuals need to grow their businesses. And again, we kind of started with her looking for a job that was more suited to her brilliance. But as she was seeing what I was doing, she's like, but what if I could help? And her whole thing is Etch Consulting, leaving a mark. So we're both about helping companies and people leave a mark. She's like, how could I go in and help companies really decipher who their audience is, what their audience needs, and help them build a business that will leave a mark? So we took her in a completely different location. I have my beautiful client, Julia, who actually made my jewelry today. And she's phenomenal. She's got a very, very successful jewelry company, but I just like to think of her as she's a magician. I mean, she is such a presence. And when you're with her, you feel such a transformation. And so as I got to know her a little bit better, I found out, yes, she actually is a magician in modern day, and she helps people with this alchemical shift to kind of do what I'm doing too, but to really help them discover who they are. And she's like, these aren't necklaces, they're amulets. And there's just something so magical about her. So this is just a few of my clients, but they're really powerful women who are, in some cases, completely leaving what they did before, in some cases, morphing slightly, but they're really focused on getting their message into the world. Same message, many different ways of getting there.
I get it, right? So I think that's awesome. I think three great examples. You've got the rocket scientist, you've got the research analyst, maybe doing some advanced analytics. I actually don't. Too many companies are great with data. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
And then the last one is you talk about your magician, and that kind of gets me excited. But for somebody watching, they're probably thinking, hold on, Viveka, I am not a rocket scientist. I am definitely not an analyst. And I do have no intention of creating anything magical in the way you're describing it, maybe. But I do think people do want to make an impact and make that contribution. So here's my question. Somebody watching this who doesn't see themselves in those three case studies,
right?
What's the common themes? What are the common denominators? What do you notice about all three women? I mean, you said these are strong, powerful leadership type individuals. Who I speak to, it's definitely who you speak to.
Yeah.
What do you notice about them that we could share to connect somebody watching to those stories?
Yeah, what's really interesting, and I didn't actually put it out this way, but this seems to be who I'm attracting. All of my women, those three plus a plethora more, they all want to leave their mark, which is literally what Jacqueline's doing with Etch Consulting. They all want to leave their mark, but how we come at it is different. So we have women who are in the legal world and want to coach other lawyers. We have women who are wanting to become speaker agents. I mean, it's an interesting group, but they all want to be on a stage of some kind so that their voices are heard, and they all have a book in them, surprisingly. So the ones who don't want to actually be on stage, at the very least, not the very least, but have a book in them, no matter what industry they're in. And the message seems to be very similar. And again, whether you're a magician or a rocket scientist, it's about empowering people to actually be living in their truth and be living towards their calling, if you want to use a word or if I want to use a word like that, but living in their truth, living their calling, living in integrity, and doing so in a way that is going to affect change in the world.
I love that. Yeah. So they're embracing a journey. You're helping them embrace that journey. The way you describe it makes me think about alignment. So these people are morphing. I want to talk a little bit about that. I see that in my world too.
Yeah.
It's that a lot of people who see my content or come into my environments that, you just want me to become an entrepreneur and start some funnel and have a funnel-based business that sells. And
Scale.
that is not what I do. And yes, I think it's a good thing. So perhaps talk about that, this morphing and this transitional period and the longevity of that.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, from the moment I decided to walk away from what it was I was doing, what
Yeah.
people might call climbing the ladder, I now call the jungle gym. It took me another 10 to 15 months to kind of get out of that and manage
Yeah.
it. So what are you seeing with the morphing and the transition periods for these ladies?
So I work with women 50, 60, and 70, which means we entered the workforce in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And in many cases, we had to put on the Teflon suit and become mini men in order to stay alive and thrive, right? So we had to intrinsically change the core of who we were and shut off what made us powerful women in order to really succeed in this is going to sound so 1970s feminist, but to succeed in a man's world. And this isn't true of every single woman, and it's not true of every single industry, but it happened a lot. And so my women, they've become mini men to some extent. We've also, broken through glass ceilings, some of us not even realizing they were there, broken through the glass ceilings, mentored other women, tried to bring them with us. And we've worked really, really hard to position ourselves as thought leaders, as influencers. That's a new word, obviously. We weren't talking about being influencers back in the 1990s. Thank God. And subject matter experts and executives in our company. But what's happening is, as we grow older, first of all, that Teflon suit no longer fits anymore. It's like way too constraining. And even if we've opened it up a little bit and we're allowing the feminine out, it's still often very confining and not accepted, depending on what your role is and what industry you're in. And it's sad that that's still true. And again, yes, there are great companies out there who are very inclusive and they support their older women, diverse employees, but it's not as widespread as I would like. So I have these women who are like, I have so much to give, got so much experience. I have such an amazing network of people. I have a voice, but it doesn't fit anymore where I'm at. And people aren't listening to me anymore where I'm at. So I get a lot of my women who are just getting aged out, and they still have something to say. They don't want to go play golf and eat bonbons and play with their grandchildren and go on cruises 24/7. They might want to do that for a while, and that's cool, but they really want a life-work balance. It's a big transition because you're going from 80-hour work weeks in many cases to like, now what, And so a lot of them are feeling the squeeze, and they're realizing I'm not done, and they're realizing I have something to say, but they're also feeling exhausted because wearing that suit is very exhausting, and wearing all the expectations of others, both positive and negative, is also exhausting. And so they're like, I know there's more to do, but I don't have the energy to do it. And so what I help them with, I don't even remember what the original question was. What I help them with is like, let's peel off that suit. Let's step away from those expectations. Let's burn away what no longer serves us. And let's dive deep inside and find out what it is that you were put on this earth to do. What is your calling? Where can you affect change in this world? And what's the best way for you to do it? And then I can take my, 20 years of sales and marketing expertise and help them begin to craft this new business and get it out into the world.
I applaud you, because as a white man in this man's world you're talking about, it's difficult for me to connect with the 55-year-old plus woman, irrespective of her background, where she's come from, because of some of the dynamics in which you're talking. So I thank you for what you do. Right now, there's a late 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s lady, a woman at work, and she's trying to figure out who to trust, who to go and speak to. Because I think this was my challenge. It's likely it was yours at some point in the past. But for all of these three, there are our rocket scientists, our analytic lady, and our magician, that they didn't either. And so once they make the connection, and if you're watching this and this is you, this description and the feeling of, I can't break out in this while I'm still trying to shatter a career barrier. Because yes, you can break through a glass ceiling, but it's unlikely you can do it by yourself and not suffer too much. Because I think you talked about this constraint. And I think that's wonderful. A question that's probably coming up, it's coming up for me. So I think it's probably coming up for the viewers or the listeners here. Think about that freedom piece, because I think this unleashing ourselves, and you have that phrase, unleash your legacy is on your website. I saw that there.
Yeah.
This is, how do they get away from the check in the chair?
Yeah.
And thinking about the mind shift. Perhaps maybe there's some mindset stuff in this, but tell us a little bit about the conversations you've had with your client pool, or even people you've never worked with, but you speak to from the stage, about freedom, unleashing this individual inside and becoming more free with what we do. Tell us a little bit about that.
You said it. There's a huge amount of mindset work. What it comes down to, though, is sitting in this chair and getting this check more comfortable than breaking free. And you get to a point where it's not. Unfortunately, many women like me, we have to have what I call the God smack, right? We have to have the universe, whatever, boom, like time to move. For me, it was a medical situation. I was literally in a hospital bed going, what the am I doing? Like, why am I writing grants for this company when I only have maybe weeks left, maybe months left? Like, what am I doing? Thankfully, all is well, and I have years and years left. But I had to get to that point of, I can't do this with the rest of my life. So when the discomfort of sitting in that chair outweighs what's next, that's usually what can move you along. Now, a lot of my women, we get to I called my company Beyond the Dream Board, because literally I was, during COVID times, cleaning out my garage, and I found an old dream board. I'm like, got that, did that, have that. Oh, didn't really want that anyway, and I wasn't happy. And I was like, how can I have achieved like literally every goal I set for myself, down to the car, down to the houses, down to the husband who I love and he's wonderful. But how do you achieve everything you want and still not be happy? And I'm like, oh, there must be something beyond the dream board. There must be something on the other side of this. And so when my women get to that point where they just can't do it anymore, or they age out, or the company says, that's pretty clear. That's a pretty clear sign. I do have a couple women I talked to who they just weren't ready, right? They just weren't, they were a little under 50, and they just weren't ready to leave the status they had. And that's fine. But there comes that point where it's just too uncomfortable, and you realize how valuable your time is, number one, and that you want to spend it in a different way. And you realize that what you're doing is not leaving the mark that you want to leave anyway. There's something else. I knew there was something else I was going to be doing. I knew I was still going to be speaking and writing. I love speaking and writing. They're my gifts, but maybe not about LinkedIn. Which is what I did for all those years.
This is so good, and I can go in different directions. Where do I go next? I want to talk about empowerment. So maybe we go to empowerment now. So and this gives you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about first steps. So let's say I'm 55 and I'm coming in. I'm a woman now. You have to imagine me as a woman. I could send you some frightening pictures of me doing my Grease audition. I won't. What will I experience? Because I want people to understand, what are you going to do? First 2 or 3 things that you would do in an engagement, in a conversation. Give us those or tips that somebody can do now. And if they're ready to come and do that with you live, they can do it. But what could they do now?
Right.
They don't want to call you. They've got things to figure out.
So the first thing is, it's literally an intake form. And what blows me away, and I guess if I had someone like me to work with, I wouldn't have had these answers either. But there's a bunch of what seem like basic questions, but it's really an exploration of mindset. The questions that blow people away, like, are, how many hours a week do you want to work? Right? They don't even think that. They're like, well, of course, 60 to 80. Okay. What I can work 20 or 30. It's okay for me to work 20 or 30 hours a week. So that's a big one. And just, you could just see some people going, oh my gosh, I can choose, right? How many weeks off a month or how many weeks off a year do you want? How many months off a year do you want? Again, like, I can have more than 5 weeks off a year. What? Who do you want to work with? Like, never mind what you're actually doing, close your eyes, imagine who it is that you want to work with. For me, I knew I wanted nothing against men. You're the best allies ever. But having worked with men pretty exclusively, both on my team and as clients for at least the last 7 years, I needed a little more feminine energy. So like, I want to work with women. I want to work with older women who've kind of figured it out. I want to work with women who don't have children at home or who have children who've left, because that's never been my battle. That should be not that kids are battles, but I don't have kids. I don't know how to deal or help women who are dealing with children at home. So I need older women, is what I'm trying to say. It's so cool. Like when you put this out into the universe, like I want women that I freaking love and would be best friends with anyway, even if they weren't my clients. Like I would want to hang out with them. No more of these clients that you take just for money. Like I want women who I like admire, love, adore, etc. They all are. They all are. And it's really funny because there's been a couple people who did my intake, and I think we mutually decided this was not going to fit. We are not. And they wouldn't have been my best friends and I wouldn't have been there. So it's for my women, like having the freedom to choose who they want to work with and what that looks like before we even get into what is the job. And that allows us to start to create some boundaries too. And that's where some of this weight starts to come off. Like you can see the intake of breath when they realize I can work 30 hours, I can work half the year, I can work with people I love. Maybe I want to work more hours if I'm working with people I love, and I can do it doing a job or doing work that is actually deeply meaningful to me. Just that one practice is absolutely huge.
I love this concept of strive for 30, that's my concept, right? 30 productive hours a week should be enough.
Yeah.
You want time to live your life. And you talked about that life and work balance, not work-life balance earlier. So I think that's the first one. So write down, how many hours would you like to spend working on your missions, your purposes, your things of excitement? And I've worked with ladies in their 60s who said, I kind of want to do 10 or 12 hours a week.
Yeah.
I'm a writer, but I think 2 hours a day of writing, that's enough for me. I'm good with that, right? So that's a good thing. So second one is, how much time off? I love that. I love that concept. I talk about 6 weeks minimum. So I love that you said 5 weeks minimum. So we're pretty aligned.
Yep.
Yeah. How can you figure out a life for you that doesn't have 6 to 8 weeks off? If you're working on a 10-day, 15-day, plus a few holidays here and there, it's quite restrictive. And so thinking about that, I think that's the second one for you to write down is how many weeks per week? No work. Yeah. So you can do some that you really want to get enjoy with. And then the last one I really love is because it talks to a theme that I talk about is you want to work with who you want to work with, where you want to work with them, doing what you want to do. And I love what you said about making sure that those people, I think made me think of this quote, and I don't know if this is relevant. It felt like it was. Don't eat with people you wouldn't starve with.
I love that. Amen.
You gotta want to hang around with them, even if they're not paying you. And I think about my client pool right now, it's exactly the same. And one of my great friends and his buddies, he's just landed in India. We chat like we're friends. We're texting each other, even though that's not about the client work. We'll get together tomorrow and do his coaching session, but all of it's about how's the airport, is it busy? We're actually having a friendship. And that just matters so much. And I think that's really good. Were you coached? Were you mentored into this position? Tell us a little bit about your journey of coaching and what you feel it's like to have those people around you. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I've always been drawn towards coaching. In fact, I got my, I got a certification as a coach back in like 2006, 2007, then didn't do anything with it. And then I, played around with the idea, and I definitely was coaching in my previous jobs, just not coaching what I actually wanted to be doing. So that to me was, I love that aspect of the one-on-one. What you were saying earlier, funnel scaling, I know how to do all that. I don't want to do that anymore. I actually love the one-on-one conversations. And when we started the last company, I really missed those one-on-one conversations and diving deep and getting below the surface. So I personally love the active coaching. And then I hired a coach. And one of the things that I realized was, if I'm not willing to invest in myself, how can I expect other people to invest in me? Like if I'm not willing to pay $25,000 or whatever for a coach, that's what I paid, then how would I ever expect a woman to pay that to pay me that. Like, talk about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So that, which is another rabbit hole we can jump down. So for me, yes, I hired a coach. I was part of a mastermind. I actually have two coaches right now that I work with, one a little more woo-woo, one a little bit more business focused, but I need that support as I'm building my business. One of the things my clients say to me is like, your belief that I can do this is probably the most important part of what we do together. And I do. I thoroughly 100% believe that my clients can achieve what they're aiming for. And truly, that's, the coaches that I work with, especially my woo-woo one. Hey, Rick, a dude, by the way, his belief in me gets me through my tough times too. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Perfect. I'm glad you said it, because I think I posted about this recently. I have so many coaches, two masterminds, for different things, business and mindset and marketing type things. But then having a one-to-one, someone who can give me the Godsmack, right? You called it.
Yes.
Someone who can
Before the
just
universe does it.
just stop. Just please don't do that, because the minimum, he calls it minimum viable dose, effective dose, isn't what you're doing. It's this thing. So can you do that, please? And I think
It's
that's
very
really
Tim
valuable.
Ferriss, but yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I like that you talked about investment and 25K. Yeah, so I've paid to $50,000 a year for somebody, but it's vital, because that message resonates, and I think it should resonate with you watching. That's you, we're watching. If you want to sell something to somebody down the line, you can only sell as you buy.
Yeah.
So buying the Chevy Nova or whatever the vehicle is, you're only going to sell at the same level. But if you're buying Ferraris, you're going to be selling Ferraris. And I think that's an important distinction. It took me a long time to learn that my investment of tens of thousands of dollars into a coach, like it is right now, one, it's going to pay off great, but it allows me to step into a market where that's the fees that we can attain from what we're doing, so we can work a lot less hours and spend more time. And I love your one-on-one model. It's the same as mine, is a lot more time intimately getting to know the human and their family, and where their kids are out of home, learning about the challenges of that, what that looks like, separation anxiety and other things. So that was really, really good. I think that's good. And hello, Rick. Let's go back to something you were talking earlier in this session about book writing, because one of my coaches is well known in copywriting and direct response marketing. Is a gentleman called Brian Kurtz. He's one of my. Brian has this phrase: if you have a story to tell, write your goddamn book. And so
absolutely.
My experience, and I think this is true for you, and I want you to talk about this from your client's perspective. My experience is every client who comes to me has a story to tell.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I think there's a book in all of them. So tell us a little bit more about that process and what you've seen working with the people you're working with now, and what, maybe give us a live project, an example of something that's happening now. And I'm sure it's going to connect, because the things that people want to write about affect everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm obviously a big fan of writing. I've written several books. I have a writing coach too. And I'm in a writing mastermind as well. So I guess I forgot about that one, but yes. And I'm writing my latest book now, which really feels like a passion project. So there's 3 or 4 books I wrote kind of like I had to, like Wiley came to me and said, will you write a book on LinkedIn? So I'm going to say no. So I did that one. And then I have this, 101 Ways to Rock series, which I do with my friend Dana, which love those. But I haven't felt passionate about writing since I wrote my first science fiction novel at 15, not published. Don't even bother looking for it. But I was like passionate about that one because it came from within. This whole story presented itself and came from within, which was really weird because it was The Matrix came out like several years after I wrote this book, and a lot of similarities there. I'm like, why didn't you publish me? But anyway, so this new book that I'm reading, which is Beyond the Dream Board, subtitle Still Being Determined. And it really is, it's my story. So it's both autobiographical, but it obviously pulls in the tools because I always have to teach. I'm also a teacher. So I have to teach. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, it's so crazy. Like I don't put it out there that I work with coaches and that I work with speakers and writers, but my one message to the world is women's words change the world. So I guess it's natural that I would attract them. But a lot of them, they come to me wanting to create this product or wanting to create this coaching or wanting to create this mastermind or wanting to create this consulting business, but every single one of them has a book inside them. In fact, my one of, my brilliant research client, she's writing a book with her father right now about men going through this transition
Wow.
of, retirement, because that is, I think even more than women, we know how to self-care and we know we have been working and taking care of others like our whole lives mostly. So and we still are, but we're not as aligned with our job as men maybe are. And so there's such a disconnect when you're this thing and known for this thing your whole life. And then you hit 65 and you're supposed to go play golf. But anyway, that's not my client base, but she's writing a book on that. Like, who knew? I mean, just so I love that my rocket scientist, she is writing an amazing book about her life. Like, her life is cray. It's amazing what she has navigated. And she's obviously going to be a huge mentor towards other women going through the same thing. And it's just so cool. It's just so cool that all these women have such important things to say. And I am not a book coach. I will refer them to book coaches. I am not one, but I am definitely there to support them in their desire to get their words out there.
Wonderful. You made me think about my mum passed away in 2009. And when we were clearing the house or kind of spending time in the house,
Yeah.
it was incredible to see her words written on page of her story, her version of events.
Yeah.
Some of it was incredibly humorous, and my mum was always a good laugh.
Yeah.
I never ever saw her as the comedian, but it was very funny. Some of the stories she would tell, and she had them written down, and so that's a wonderful thing. And it makes me think about a couple of things you've said. So maybe we start to wrap this up a little bit. So mini men, tell me more. Yeah, tell me more about that bit, because I know you said at the beginning. I want to hear your perspective, and I have a perspective on it, and maybe we could get to some kind of alignment on that, and that would give the people watching an idea about where they are.
I know it's not PC, like, I get that. And again, don't want to diminish men. Some of them can be amazing allies. And I got one of my degrees in women's studies. So I have seen myself shift who I am in order to fit in. And I was in a man's world. I went with my dad everywhere to trade shows. He was in sales. And I aligned much more with my father in sales than I did with my mother, who was a teacher, but was a school teacher. And I didn't get that was actually an awesome calling that I could not do. God bless the teachers out there. My dad taught me to hang glide, or paid to teach me to hang glide when I was 15. That was definitely a man's world. And so I was very much, trying to fit in with the guys, to the point where we were in a race, a hang gliding race, ridge race, and I was going to show them off. I got too close to a tree and landed in the top of a tree. I was a little bit too much of the guys back then. And even in my most recent, which I helped to found, but I had other women saying I smile too much and I laugh too much in my trainings. And I had my co-founder tell me to smile and laugh less. And one of our clients, like, literally in the business suit, Tom James, I love that company, but the suit that that they made me, like 3-piece pinstripe with a vest, like mini man. And it did not make me feel empowered at all, but I did what I had to do to fit in. Or at least what I thought I had to do to fit in. And so I feel like there are many women who've gone through my situation or worse. I won't even get into the whole #MeToo, but we've done some crap. Like, I was in auto sales for a while. Like, we have done some things that we are not proud of in order to fit in. I can I can guarantee you almost every woman in their 50s, 60s, and 70s has. So that's what I mean by mini men, not to
Yeah.
be disrespective of men, disrespecting men, but
I don't think I take it that way, and I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
think people watching take that way. And
yeah,
at this point in the conversation, it's likely that we've mostly got a female dominant
yeah.
audience. If we haven't,
Chances
then
are,
great, that's
hey
good too.
girl.
But it makes me think of this. It's kind of maybe the opposite of that is Wonder Woman. The
Yeah,
irony about putting on a three-piece suit, but
yeah,
actually when you revealed that, I think about Linda, I've got Linda Carter in my head
yeah. I
now.
know.
And and it really is Wonder Woman. And the reason I say that is because my perspective of this is that
Yeah.
the most successful managers that I had were women, more responsible and more
Mhm.
better decision makers. Funnily enough, extremely emotional, but very low on emotions when it came to business decisions.
Mhm.
So business decisions, low emotion, things happening in the business, super high emotion,
Yeah,
but more about empathy and compassion and actually
yeah,
caring about individuals and delivering some kindness. I learned so many of those things from those women. So I
yeah,
see that Mini Men as it's an attachment to a Wonder Woman, because underneath that three suit
yeah.
is this blue and gold and red.
Yes.
So
All
I
the
don't know.
curves.
Let's wrap this up. We have a couple of minutes to just kind of
Okay.
quickly talk about your last phrase there, which was women's words change the
Change
world,
the
and that's
world.
a
Yeah.
maxim you're using, and I loved it when we spoke a couple of weeks ago. So tell us a little bit about what that means to you.
It took me forever to come up with that. So the other mastermind I was with Cami Gildner, also a great coach. So I do have a girl coach and a boy coach. But with Cami, she has this one message to the world. And she's like, that is your why. What's your why? That is your why. And it was a year. I was like trying on all of these things that just didn't fit. And then I was at this speaking training event called Soul Speaks, which is totally cool. And I'm a very, I've got my slides and I've got my professional and this whole like wing it idea, which is Soul Speaks. It was hard to do. But anyway, so I was at the Soul Speaks event, winging it. And that's where women's words changed the world. I think it literally came out as I was speaking. And it was like, oh, that's it, and it's my why. Everything I do, does this serve women's words change the world? Everyone I work with, are their words that I want out in the world, and for me, not to get into politics, but I'm like, how the heck how is this our reality right now? Like, how is this our reality right now in 2024?
Yeah.
Something's got to give, something's got to shift. To pull back in on my 1990s feminism, like I think it is that feminine energy that is going to have to shift the world. So it's our words, it's our voices, but I just like the alliteration of women's words change the world. So that's why I went with that. But it's our voices that are going to make the shift. And otherwise we're screwed. I mean, you can edit that last if you want.
Oh, that is definitely staying in. Yeah, so I want to thank you. Thank you so much. I want to wrap it by saying this. If you're here and you watch this to this minute, feel more. As you think, say, as you think, do, be seen, be heard. I think it's been a wonderful message from Viveka today. So we're going to wrap it up. Viveka, one more thing for you to give to us before you go, and that is, where does somebody find you in the next 30 seconds? What would they click on? And we're going to put that in the show notes.
Actually, if you Google me, finally my new website's coming up. So you would have to do it with the correct spelling of my name. But yeah, if you Google me, I'll show up. But if you go to beyondthedreamboard.com, which are in the show notes, you'll find me there. There's an about me, there's a contact me. I am more than happy to jump on a call with anyone who has questions.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time and energy today. I appreciate you. And I'm looking forward to doing round 2 of this sometime in 2025, where we hear more about your 3 scientist, your analyst, and your magician. It's gonna be fun. Okay, thanks for see you soon.
Thanks.
I know there are tons of you out there who would like to get more information, just like the video we just went through. So if you just click this link, I'll see you on the inside, where I'll be giving you more tools, tips, strategies, and methodologies for you to level up in your career or your mission. I'll see you inside.